Welcome everyone, my name is Patrycja Rozwora and I'm the host of Kitchen Conversations, a platform to speak about contemporary art from so-called Eastern Europe. In each episode, you're gonna be introduced to one artist, sometimes also a collective, whose visual or activist practice sheds light onto the complex former socialist region, with all its histories, cultures, languages, foods, but also traumas and their inevitable contemporary consequences. The podcast is a fully independent platform existing since May 2020. If you enjoy the monthly conversations, you can support me via Patreon or share the episodes with your friends or via social channels. Welcome back, dear listeners. I'm happy to have you back. Finally, we also got some spring weather in Europe. For most of us, it also means allergy season, so I hope I can record this intro without sneezing. Anyway, my today's guest, Karolina Grzywnowicz, is a Polish artist who is currently also based in Berlin. So we met in her Berlin studio. And I'm very happy to introduce to you a visual artist whose work bridges contemporary art, research, and activism. Her work deals with plants and nature in social and political context, often of violent nature. Her methodology, as we're going to find out today, involves working not only with artists and within a closed artist studio, but together with specialists across various disciplines. So botanists, soil researchers, hydrologists, and in general local people, to allow for a space of interaction and exchange of knowledge, which I very much appreciate, and I also try to bring that forward in this podcast. Today we will mainly speak about her ongoing project that reveals an active change of landscape as an instrument of power used either to oppress people or to rewrite history. Distillates, the title of the project, received a special prize of the ING Polish Art Foundation during the Warsaw Gallery Weekend last year, and it was exhibited in one of my favorite Warsaw-based galleries, Jednostka. So I was super happy to see it there and also hear Karolina speak about the process of working on that piece and also the next steps she's gonna take very soon. So before we enter into the conversation, I thought to read to you a small fragment that I found on Karolina's website that I think very well introduces her whole practice and idea about nature and art. The environment, despite the way we are used to thinking about it, was not and is not a passive background for historical processes and events. Going beyond the anthropocentric perspective allows us to see nature as an actor, witness, and co-participant of history, and landscape to be read as a living archive in which traces of past events are recorded. The violent practices that were applied to people in the 20th century not only had an impact on the environment, but also have their roots in the modern attitude to nature. Welcome, Karolina, to Kitchen Conversations.
Thank you.
Happy to be hosted in your studio. How are you feeling today?
I'm good, thank you.
You are traveling usually a lot, right? But now you're in Berlin for a while.
For 2 more weeks. Okay. Then I'm going to Palestine to produce the new project.
You live between Berlin and other places, or where are you based?
Now I'm based in Berlin. Mm-hmm. And since I moved to Berlin, I also started to travel a lot. So I was on a couple of different art residencies. And so I spent some time in Stuttgart in Akademie Schloss Solitude. Then I was on 3 residencies in Ujazdowski Castle, Center of Contemporary Art in Warsaw. And altogether it was 1 year, which I spent in Warsaw. And then I was also in Palestine. And different places. So.
We'll speak about that also later. I'm always curious when speaking to artists, like how did art start for you, or like how did the profession of an artist appeal to you, and what was your motivation to do this very difficult, I think, lifestyle and thing in life?
It didn't come early, at the early stage for me, because I didn't have much of the connection with art and art world. So my mom is a botanist, my dad is a soil researcher, and they always took me to the botanical gardens, not to, for example, museums or galleries. And then I was studying literature. I studied comparative literature, and at that time I was pretty sure that I would stay at the university.
As an academic.
Yeah, but when I actually received this offer, then I said no, because I knew at that very moment that I want to be a storyteller myself, and I would like to make art projects.
Nice. And then somehow the nature or plants that were, I guess, shown to you as a kid kind of came back in your art practice and are still present.
I tried very hard to escape that for many years. And then, because I didn't know that this background was at all important to me until I made this very first project called Weeds, which was about specific set of plants that grow in this abandoned villages in southeastern part of Poland. And this region is now famous of being like the widest part of Poland, but the biggest villages were located in this area. And after Second World War, almost 700,000 people were forcibly relocated from this region, and all these villages were burned down. It was very brutal action, actually. So the soldiers came to the village, they gave people 2 hours to pack, and they forcibly resettled them, and they set these villages on fire just in purpose to show those villagers that they would never come back. So there is like no visible evidences that people used to live there, but the plants. And the plants are actually the only reminder of the human presence in this environment.
Which cities are close to those areas? Just like geographically, so we can locate.
It was actually
a
vast area. It was the Bieszczady Mountains and Beskidy and Roztocze on the northern part. So it was a big region. So from Rzeszów, Sanok, Krosno. And I did a big research then about those plants that were introduced to this environment by humans, and they could survive 70 years without taking care of them. And then, because, I was completely blind at the beginning. I couldn't, everything was green. And but then after this research, I just realized that you not only can mark the space that the village was, like you can not only tell that the village was there, but you can also restore the whole topography of the village. And after this 1 year research, I was able to say that, okay, if you have this kind of plants, for example, ash trees or lime trees in the circle, it means that an Orthodox church was in the middle. If you find this plant, like periwinkle, for example, which is evergreen plant, and so it was a symbol of eternal life. That's why it was planted on graves. So maybe you are on a cemetery, and this kind of traces.
How do you research that? Like, who was helping you? I guess, like, you had to speak to people who are more educated in plants and like land and so on.
Yeah, of course. I started talking to the local people. But this is very interesting because those places, they have very specific affected aura, and they are like taboo spaces. So people really didn't want to talk to me about this, and they really discouraged me to go to those places. So of course it encouraged me to really search for
deeper, yeah.
Exactly. But so I started from the local people. Then I asked some botanists, ethnobotanists, then I talked to my dad, who is a soil researcher, and he said actually that those plants, because the human ingression into the soil is so significant, that those plants have a material that they need for life for the next 600 years. So, it's when we see, when we perceive plants, we often think that they are very fragile, but at the same time, they are super persistent. And they are really a powerful tool and a powerful reminder.
Yeah, I think we definitely underestimate nature. I feel like we kind of have this idea that we control nature, but I think at the end of the day, the nature definitely is way smarter and stronger than the human species. And yeah, definitely. Why do you find it important to speak about history and different social issues through plants?
It came to me like by the surprise, really, with this very first project. But this was the moment I just also developed the methodology, and because I just realized that it can be also a tool to understand our surrounding and our place on Earth, and and also start perceiving the landscape as also a scenography and a scene, like a crime scene, for example, that the traces are there, but we need to just recognize them as traces.
And I guess also like develop this practice of looking.
Yeah.
I feel we also often there is stuff which just comes by us and we don't even notice.
Exactly. There is also this blindness, right, that we all kind of have, and it's like different way of looking, and perceiving our surrounding,
Just now a question came in mind, since of course both of us live in Berlin, and Berlin has a lot of green, yet of course it's a city, there's a lot of concrete blocks, and I wonder like how do you find connection to nature living here, and is it perhaps easier since now you also like work a lot with plants and nature? Do you have certain strategies of how to live closer to nature, being in a big city surrounded by cars and all this pollution and so on?
I'm also very much a city person. I can't like imagine myself living in the countryside. All right. But I'm also every week I try to go to some lakes, and we have like so many lakes around Berlin.
That's true, yeah.
So, and also I just realized that this is also a way of working for me. That I work, and like the best ideas and the best inspirations I got when I'm walking. Mm-hmm. So this is like a very intensive creative process for me, actually, the walking through the forest and or being at the lake.
Walking still in nature or also around the city works well for you? Creatively.
Both, but better is when it's in nature,
yeah. Nice. But then you're also happy to be in the city and then don't have so much green around you. That also keeps you kind of balanced then.
Yeah, and I just need like all this, cinema galleries and culture.
Cultural stimulation. Yeah, that's always the thing. Like nature's so beautiful and so peaceful, but that's somehow always missing. Especially I feel if you're a creative and you want to be like inspired with others' works and as well. Yeah.
Yeah, but also like the cities are our nature, right? We created this environment, and
indeed, yeah,
this is our habitat.
Yeah.
I don't know if we should be proud of it.
Interesting to think about that. But I guess I wonder how different it would be if everyone would decide. I mean, it's certain groups of people who kind of created it around their needs.
Yeah, of course.
I guess, right? Yeah. Yes, I wanted to speak now about your project Distillates. It's your recent project that got quite some exposure, and I really was excited to speak about it with you. At the beginning, I think it's always good if the artists themselves tells a few sentences about it, what it is for you and how it started for you.
So this is a project about landscape as an instrument of power, and how is it transformed, not according to the aesthetic needs, but political interests. And like I'm very much interested in this contaminated landscapes and how people or powers are marking territories. And in this particular project, I'm not so much focused on ecocide and destruction of environment, but I'm exploring this politics of planting and this greenwashing policies and actually plants that are or were used to camouflage sites of violence.
I felt like the term politics of planting, it really stuck with me like the first time I read it. Is it actually a whole study that is being explored, or is it a term that you just use for your own work? It sounds like it could be a whole academic topic.
This is a term I found in one short introduction for the conference, which was organized at Goldsmiths by Dr. Sheila Sheikh. No, there is like no huge study about it. I just like this term because it's exactly the right definition of what was going on.
What was going on
in Palestine and in Poland. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tell us more like the practical part. Like the project has 2 case studies, and from the case studies you developed also art work or art thing.
First, I did a big research about how Nazis were using plants to in their machine of conquer and extermination, especially how they were using plants in Poland to, for example, camouflage mass graves or concentration camps and death camps in Poland. And they really use the specific plants, and they have a really great knowledge about plants. And they really wanted to create a green barrier, for example, around the camp, so no one could see what was happening there. And because, Holocaust is supposed to be the perfect crime without witnesses, without traces. So they really paid a great attention to camouflage everything and to erase all the traces. For example, after demolition of the death camps in Sobibór, in Bełżec, in Treblinka, they planted pine trees. And they picked pine trees because of a couple of reasons. Because it's like the most common tree in Poland, so it doesn't look like cut and paste.
Exactly. Out of kind of different story, different place. Yeah,
and it is frost resistant. It has almost no soil requirements, and it grows very, very fast. So it can conceal everything in a very short time. And also planting pine trees was an important part of the Zionists' plan of transforming this historical landscape of Palestine, to take away its indigenous character and to impose this Eastern European look. So it looks native, like it looks more familiar to those Jews
coming,
from
right, or
to the newcomers, exactly. Yeah. So it can encourage the Jews from Poland and neighboring countries to move there and settle there. And it was a mass, really a big action, even like this. We can now today could call it a crowdfunding campaign, because they organized the funding and they were organizing this big action, collecting money from Jews from the diaspora and it has a slogan to make the desert bloom. This whole action was also to emphasize this narrative of inhabiting in no man's land. So Palestine is supposed to be, the land without people for the people without land. So they really had to erase the presence of Palestinians from this landscape. And as many of your listeners might know, that the landscape of Palestine is a cultivated landscape. There are hills covered with terraces. So they really wanted to conceal all these terraces, and they planted 250 million of pine trees in a very short time.
What times are we talking here about?
It was in from the 30s, 40s, and from the 1948, after establishing the State of Israel and after Nakba and the mass displacement of Palestinians, they planted also this pine forest on top of erased Palestinian villages. They demolished most of the buildings, and then they planted pine trees for exactly the same reason, because they grow very fast. And they really wanted to be, Zionists really wanted to be perceived as only victims, not the oppressors. So the pine tree is supposed to camouflage all the violence that was happening there.
Quite striking, of course. It's hard not to see the dark irony of that one tree that was hiding the Holocaust was then used by the Zionists to cover their own crimes.
Yeah, exactly. But this process didn't end in the 40s. They are really continuing and using plants in a different ways to suppress Palestinians and to uproot Palestinians, to really cut their bond with the land. And so Palestinians, for example, are not allowed to pick herbs, and they are really criminalized for that. And there is a film, I actually haven't seen it yet, but this is the film of Jumana Mana about herb pickers. I also work with the same lawyer who actually was trying to help people who are in prison because they had been caught with having a little bit of za'atar with them. Za'atar is a thyme. It was a law made by Ariel Sharon, who was at a very short time Minister of Agriculture in Israel. And he created a list of protected plants. And it's also very vicious, gesture, because what we need more than protecting plants, right? And this kind of policies. But it was actually the reason for that was strictly political, and it was, against Palestinians because they use thyme in their cuisine. It's super important ingredient of the za'atar, and they use za'atar for everything, adding to even popcorn when you go to this hipster bar, but also the bread, olive, and za'atar is the full meal. And they drink tea with sage, and so picking of sage is also banned. And it also criminalizes the groups of Palestinians that they can be hardly criminalized because who is picking herbs, elderly people who try to earn a little bit of money maybe on the market, but they are they are indigenous people there. They know where to pick it, how much they can pick, so it grows, so it's safe and it can grow next year in the same place. So the herb picking now, it's an act of resistance in Palestine. And also they are using eucalyptus right now. And this is my third case study, and
I was waiting for it.
I'm coming back to Palestine now also to work on this case because they are using eucalyptus against Bedouins. And Bedouins, they live on a desert, and the Negev desert is 75% of the whole Israel territorial. Let's call it like that. So the Palestine occupied in 1948, as what Palestinians say. And they don't fit in this vision of the modern country. So they are regularly displaced, and they are forcibly resettled to these 3 ghettos that they were created for Bedouins, but they are still coming back. And Jewish National Fund, they plant eucalyptus on the sides of the Bedouin villages, and they pick eucalyptus because it grows very, very fast, and also it absorbs a lot of water. And Bedouins are shepherds, so they always have animals. They have camels, then they have goats, they have sheep, and so they depend on the water sources. And they always locate their villages where the water sources are, because they need it for themselves, they need it for animals. And eucalyptus it absorbs so much water, like many, many times more than any other plant species in this environment. So it makes the springs to dry out. And this is the method of pushing them to go. When the Bedouins are coming back, they just try to remove all these eucalyptus trees. And then they are, pictured by Israelis as barbarians who are destroying this ecological efforts of the Jewish National Fund, but they actually are protecting this natural desert habitat, because also both pine and eucalyptus, they are not native species there. They are invasive species because they don't have natural enemies. They grow very, very fast, and they also eliminate other native species.
Super interesting. What is your insight into this region? You were doing a residency there, or how are you so often there and working there with the local people?
Yeah, so I went in 2019 for an art residency, and from the very beginning I started this plant research, because I came with my methodology from Weeds project, but then also I was right after making this research how Nazis were using plants. I came and I started asking and investigated how Zionists were using plants in their colonial project.
Did you know about it before coming, or did you find it out there?
I knew about pines, but I didn't know about eucalyptus, and I didn't know about herbs, of course.
Yeah, I can only imagine how exciting it must be to discover all these new cases. I mean, exciting for your project and of course development of your whole methodology.
Yeah. But I also came back to Poland with this research, and I talked to my parents about it. So I told them about the pine trees, and they told me actually that the pine trees are very acidic, and they acidified the soil to this extent that it's not able to be cultivated anymore. So
nothing else can grow there.
So that's why it was also the beginning of this the Distillate project, because I start thinking, what if? So it's a kind of a speculative project. What if Palestinians succeed in their fighting of the right to return, right? So they easily could rebuild the whole infrastructure, cities, towns, villages, but they would not be able to cultivate the soil. And that's why I started thinking, is it possible to change the function of these trees, of these forests?
What to do with all these trees,
exactly,
how to use them. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Is it possible to transform the function from they were used to camouflage, maybe now they can serve those oppressed communities. And so I was thinking that maybe making this essential oil is also one possible scenarios, one possible way. So they can be used by Palestinians to heal themselves, but also as a exportable commodity. So it can be sold, and maybe this kind of it would be the way to gain some profits.
I have now the smell here, the essential oil, not the one you made, but just another one from pine.
But I also, didn't want to go there as a white savior and of course, told them oh yeah, you should produce essential oil.
Capitalizing
exactly
on there.
Exactly. But I met the botanist there, Abed Alami, who already started in this 2019 producing essential oils from many different plants. And he also told me last year that he planted on his own field geranium just to make the essential oil. But then the soldiers came and they destroyed all the geranium he planted. So it's also even the production of essential oil is an act of resistance. Because also I didn't tell you that it's not only sage or thyme that are on this list of protected plants, but any plants that has medicinal effect is listed as a protected plant. And of course that can be picked by illegal Israeli settlers, but not Palestinians.
Yeah, it's quite striking that something also the whole idea of planting, the first thought is something positive, like you plant something,
Exactly.
right? And then you see how deeply dark it can get if it's in the hands of the one who is the colonizer and the settler. But coming back to the essential oils, so I find it so beautiful that you had this wonderful in-depth research that deals with some very difficult and dark histories and present-day contemporary colonialism. But you still were doing a gesture to somehow resist. I found somewhere a term micro-resistance into thinking of possible ways of using those plants, and as you said, making essential oils. You were showing those essential oils in an exhibition in Warsaw. Can you tell a little bit how you were presenting the work and how did people interact with the work and what was like the idea behind it?
As you can tell now, my whole practice is very much research-based, but I don't really want to show it, like the research on the table. I really try to create an environment as much immersive as possible installations. Usually they are very pleasant and nice to be with or in. And then it allows me to tell like all the stories about violence because people are more exposed and open to hear that when they just are in
feel good, right?
Exactly, in this pleasant environment. And so when people were entering the gallery space, they were saying like all the time, they were saying, "Oh, what smells so nice?" And then they follow the smell, and then they hear the story. And so it was an olfactory installation and creating a kind of an inhalatorium. So the smell was always present in the space, and there were some, of course, bottles with essential oils and hydrolates, and so people can also like smell it from the bottle.
Then more intensely.
Yeah.
More directly. And were you telling the stories through your voice, vocally, or could people read about it? Or?
There was a publication, so people could read it. But also during Warsaw Gallery Weekend, I was always in a gallery, so I was always like telling the story.
So I saw some recipes for different remedies you can use the essential oils for, or more maybe what the pine can provide or what it can heal or affect. Can you share some of your discoveries?
Yeah, so I worked with Barbara Błażeca. She's herbalist and plant healer. I can maybe use this term. Yeah, she came to me with like whole bibliography with these piles of books, and then we searched together about like all these different, sometimes very old recipes and actually I was very surprised that you can really use every piece of pine trees for the healing purposes.
Yeah, that was exciting to see.
From bark to needles, like everything can be used.
It's crazy. Yeah. It always surprised me how little we know, or how little I know about plants in general, but nature, how much actually knowledge we lost.
Yeah, exactly.
Through, contemporary medicine and obviously like capitalizing on everything.
Exactly. That's why I really wanted to make this a part of the project. So like incorporate this almost lost knowledge, and I really will. So I work with the local partners always. In Poland, I make this distillation with Paweł Piasecki, who is like a distillation guru in Poland, essential oil distillation. And I have worked with Abed Alami in Palestine, but also I was thinking that I really would like to work with the local herbalists and local healers, and just to gain the local recipes.
Maybe it's still gonna continue, with the new case studies. And are you using the pine essential oil yourself since you started working on the project, or is it just too much and you cannot smell it anymore?
I don't use this one from Sobibor because also, like to produce this essential oil, you need a lot of needles. So I had like 50 kilograms or even more needles, and I produced only like 4 milliliters of essential oil.
Like crazy.
So it's like...
So you have really little, so you have to be careful.
Yeah, so it's only like for
it's for art.
Exactly, this is for art. But I use pine essential oil when I'm having a cold, or I do it actually. I use it in the inhalations. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I was telling you that yesterday when preparing for this conversation, I was like, I have to get more into essential oils. And actually I found one in my house, which I didn't use. I was like, okay, maybe that's a good motivation. Well, we're getting slowly to the end of our conversation. Is there anything you would like to share with us in terms of your future projects, or what you're working on, what is going to be important for you in the next months?
Yeah, so I'm coming back to Palestine in 2 weeks to make my very first documentary movie. And it will be like a
work with film.
Yeah,
that's cool.
So it will be like a completely new medium for me, and I'm super excited because I thought that this olfactory installation, it can be very powerful, very beautiful, and very immersive, but you have to be there. So it's like very hard to transmit the story. Mm-hmm. So that's why I thought that maybe it will be good to make a documentary about this.
The process.
Also the whole story behind it. So the camouflage and made by planting, and then it can be shown as a film in a cinemas and film festivals, but at the same time it can be shown as a video installation, next to the olfactory installation in the galleries.
Great. I think indeed I think film would be very good to trace the whole story and all these different regions and histories, and I think it's definitely a good further step. Super exciting. Also nice for the listeners, so they have something to look forward to and kind of follow you and follow the new parts of the works coming. Last but not least, the last question is always about food. And food and plants, there is quite some connection. What is your favorite food from home, wherever home is for you? And I think it's always nice to finish by speaking about taste, and
which is also very much related to smell, right? Because
indeed, exactly, all the senses.
Yeah, home food. So I think they're pierogi. My mom's pierogi. So my mom's dumplings with blueberries.
So nice, sweet ones.
Yeah.
And you eat them with like cream and sugar?
Yeah, although I don't eat much sugar and I shouldn't eat gluten anymore. So that's
problematic.
That's problematic, but I can't resist really. Like she makes like super soft dough, so it's
that's special to achieve that.
Exactly.
Not so easy. You need years of practice.
Yeah, and the boiling water.
Yes, indeed, for the dough.
Yeah.
So funny that every time I speak to Polish artists, usually they say pierogi as their favorite dish.
But also żurek. This is something very special.
Yeah, and quite Easter, right? So we just had Easter, so...
Yeah, but also it's sour, and the sour taste is not so not very often present in a cuisine.
Other
right?
cuisines, that's true.
So my mom also makes this, how we can call it in English?
Yeah, it's the same what you add to the bread, like sourdough, the starter, I guess. Yeah. Zakwas, yeah.
It's also called white borscht.
Yeah, you could say that, yeah. I mean, now a lot of people know borscht because of Ukraine, of course, but it is a different borscht.
Yeah, it's definitely more sour. And my mom also baked apples and add the baked apples to that.
Wow,
so it's a nice combination with this like slightly sweet apples and the sour soup.
Do you eat it then with also with egg?
Yeah, sometimes when it comes with apples, then with potatoes more than eggs.
That's nice. So it's more like a vegetarian vegan option.
Yeah, this is a vegan option. Yeah,
it's amazing because I always look for alternatives. I'm more into vegetarian vegan cuisine, and the apple. Sounds good. I will try that. Nice. Thank you so much, Karolina, for sharing your thoughts and your project. I enjoyed meeting you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And this was it for today. Thank you for reaching till the end of this episode. And last but not least, I wanted to give you some tips of how to support this podcast if you liked what you heard. You can, of course, rate it and follow it on various streaming platforms. You can have a look and perhaps buy the Kitchen Conversations cookbook. That is a cookbook I published last year with recipes of artists who appeared on the podcast, and all the money from the sales goes to supporting this platform, of course. And lastly, you can become a patron of this podcast and support Kitchen Conversations with a monthly amount of your choice. And in return, you will receive some goodies from me and a lot of love and good energy. In the meantime, take good care, and we hear each other soon.